I was born just before Kristallnacht in Leipzig. That was the night when there was the broken glass everywhere, and the Germans, the Nazis, the stormtroopers knew every address. So they knew Markovich lived in a certain house. My mother and father were desperate to be saved. So my mother put me in her arms, and this she told me, and we all ran upstairs to non-Jewish neighbors. These wonderful people were persuaded by my mother, even though they said, our life will not be worth living if your baby makes a noise and the stormtroopers find us. Nevertheless, my mother persuaded them, please, please, save our lives. And they pushed us into a wardrobe full of coats, into the back of the wardrobe. And the stormtroopers banged on the door. Wo sind die Markoviches? Where are they? And these neighbors said, the Markoviches, they left long ago. And the stormtroopers left. So the very next day, my father, he found a man who was going with a cart and hay from village to village. And he paid him to smuggle my mother and I across to Antwerp, across the borders, across everywhere. My mother had me in her arms, and she had to learn in Flemish how to say that I am the wife of this farmer and we're visiting my auntie. And my father managed to get there also, and we all were in Antwerp in 1938. And my father started again to work. He had a fur business, very successful. And my mother said, don't settle down, it will happen again. But he didn't believe it until one night in 1940, the Nazis rounded up all the Jews in Antwerp, and my parents saw from the window the cartloads of Jews being transported one on top of the other through the streets of Antwerp. What to do? Antwerp is a port, but we had missed the last boat. We literally missed the boat because my father said it will never happen again. So my mother put birth certificate, wedding certificates in a handbag. My father was wearing a grey felt hat. He put me on his shoulders, and my mother saw him looking at the beautiful pictures that they had on the wall. And she said, Aaron, you can look. It will be the last time you ever see them. And he looked, put me on his shoulders, and I remember being on his shoulders, putting my head on his grey felt hat. He took my mother's arm, they closed the door, and we just started running. Everybody was just running. And people said, where are you running? My mother said, to Dunkirk. And people said, you're crazy, Dunkirk is on fire, the British are escaping, the Nazis are bombing. She said, where there is water, there is hope. And I remember jogging, and boom, boom, booming. But I remember once we were in like an airport hangar, like where you store helicopters, and everybody, all the people from all around rested there. When all of a sudden my father stood up, a very tall man, put me on his shoulders, pulled up my mother, and started to go out of the hangar, and everybody followed him, everybody. There was like a pond. He jumped over, everybody waded through, and when we got to the other side, boom, a direct hit on that hangar. We carried on running, and we got to the port of Dunkirk. We got into a sand bunker. So my parents saw a British officer walk past. Quickly we got out of the bunker. My father put me on his shoulders, and he said to my mother, ask him. She spoke English. She said, will you take us with the soldiers in a boat? Will you take us? No, madam, impossible. We are rescuing the British soldiers. Back into the bunker. Another officer walks past. So my father says in his best Yiddish, free game, ask this one. Again, put me on his shoulders. Up we got, and he's standing, this smart British officer. even in this terrible time, with his belt, his gun, his uniform. And my mother said, "Will you take us?" Impossible. So she pulled the gun out of his holster, held it to my head, and she said, "If you do not save us, I shoot my child, my husband, and myself before your eyes." He had such a shock. He said, "Come along, madam, come along." And I remember being pushed over a broad wooden board into the bottom of a boat and dancing along. Plonk, we were saved. So we managed to get to Great Britain, and we landed, and my father was put into jail because we lost all our papers on the way. And my mother and I were put on the Isle of Man because we were enemy aliens. We could have been spies, according to the British. So that was the way our lives were saved, and we managed to get to England. The whole thing took 2.5 years. And then the next thing was, we were interned. When we got out of prison, we had to go somewhere, and they dropped us in a little village. And I remember, by then I could walk along with my parents, knocking on the doors, saying, "Have you got a room? No Jews here." Boom. Next house, knock, knock. "Have you got a room? No Jews here." Boom. I said to my mother, "Mummy, was ist das, no Jews here?" She said, "Psh." Finally, we were given a room by a family who I know is called Alderman, an attic, and that's where we started, in our palace, one-room attic. And my father went then to London. He was in the fur trade, and he found other refugees in the fur trade. And I remember, with his first money that he earned, he said to my mother, "Gina, take this money and go and buy candlesticks for Shabbos," he called it Shabbos, Shabbat, "to light the candles." And I went with her. I remembered the candlesticks. And the next money, he said, "Gina, now go to buy a goblet to make Kiddush." And I remember going with her to buy that goblet. When I got to the age of 10, so all of a sudden I went to a children's service. And at this children's service, we were told, "Children, stand up, sing the Hatikvah. Sing the Hatikvah, today a miracle has occurred. Now we have a Medina of our own country." So we sang Hatikvah, and then I asked, what is this? Isn't this our country? No, Eretz Israel. So from that, my parents said, "We are survivors. We have escaped. We lost sisters, brothers, our parents. We don't speak the language. We cannot go." I said, "Well, I'm going." So when I got here, I felt at home. Nearly everybody was a survivor at that time. We kissed the ground. And then we brought up the family, but still I was very alone. Now, today is the first time I have been to Vision for Israel. This is an incredible center, educational and social, and obviously doing things for people who have been hurt in their lives. We've been singing, we've been dancing. I've been dancing with people who couldn't get out of the chair, and we were dancing, and you arranged a delicious breakfast for us. And we've been on the coach specially from Jerusalem to come here, and we are so happy with what we have received. We thank you. You have a real vision for Israel, and I hope very much that we'll have other opportunities to come, and that what maybe we can do also is that when we tell our stories, we realize that the vision you have for Israel is really a history of the Jewish people, and you are enhancing it. So thank you very much.